So that's the end of Sin City. Patrick, my friend, what did you think?
I liked the movie, but I couldn't help but feel that each story was kind of dumb. I liked the visual style for the most part. I liked the storytelling. But it's like, let's focus on the Marv story, which you and I both have said is the best one. What was the name of that, just to get it properly? The Hard Goodbye. The Hard Goodbye is the best story, and yet it's like all this intrigue. Okay, I'm being framed. We've got the silent killer. I got to figure out why he did this, who he is. Oh, it's just a cannibal. That's it. It's just a cannibal who doesn't make a sound and has Black Panther finger claws.
Yeah.
Like, that's, like, you have this, like, fun character in Marv, and you have all this intrigue, and then it just, like, it doesn't add to anything. Actually intrigue. Like, the story gets dumb as it goes along. The Yellow Bastard stories, like, talking about them together, starts very promising. I really like that Bruce Willis stuff. Bruce Willis nails that noirish tone so well. He's got a great look for it, too. And then, he's doing all that stuff, and okay, it's a cop who's betrayed by a corrupt cop. He saves the girl's life. 8 years later, still tries to save the girl's life. A little weird that she's now in love with him, even though he's basically a father figure. But it's just like, it's just, again, it's the same character comes back and tries to rape her again. It's like, can we get something better here? I assume they're directly taken from the graphic novels, but when you have those stories, which are the strongest stories, but they're not great stories when you boil down to it, and then, like, when you get to the other ones, Customer's Lawyer's right, it really doesn't add anything. It's just kind of bookends. The real weak point, of course, is the Clive Owen one.
The big fat kill.
Clive Owen, the least compelling lead actor, when we're comparing him to Mickey Rourke and Bruce Willis. And
well, his story is just complicated, convoluted.
Town run by section of town run by prostitutes. Like, okay, there's a prostitute versus a gang. It's like, what is this? This is dumb. We got IRA people.
And even his backstory.
We have a Japanese character, so of course she's a martial arts expert
who throws swastika ninja stars.
Yes, that was worth noting. You just need to see her eating pasta to really encompass the entirety of the Axis powers. And that story was very stupid.
And it was too long.
It was too long. It felt way too long. I liked the stuff early on. I liked the stuff with Brittany Murphy.
Yeah.
That's the thing, is like, we have these noirish stories, and then they take fantastical turns. And again, this has come up all the time. I don't really like fantasy as a genre for the most part. I like it even less when we're introduced to a world that's not super fantastical, and then it's like the fantasy just kind of comes out of nowhere. I mean, yes, there is an aura of fantasy just because of the look. But, okay, when Clive Owen just jumps out the window, it's like, okay, I guess we're just doing this now. And then I can accept a little bit of the Mickey Rourke stuff.
Well, because he looks like a rock.
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
He looks like the Thing.
But you're right.
But then it's just like, it's when we get to the Elijah Wood cannibal, and it's like, okay, this is silly, and it's strange, and it's, again, I love the visuals. I really do. I think the visuals are strong. I think a lot of the performances are really good. But this film mixes noir and comic book silliness in a way that I don't really like.
I totally understand what you're saying. And going back to something I said earlier, you either like or do not like this movie for the style. Same with like anime. Most people don't like it because they say, I don't like the style. I don't like that look. I think I find it pretty easy to just go with the flow with a very outlandish story or outlandish aspects to these rather grounded stories. And so then when it comes to a movie like Sin City, I don't mind just going with it.
I don't mind going with it in certain areas. I don't mind going with it in... This is a fantasy world. This is Gotham City. Every cop is corrupt. This is a fantasy world where there's a part of the town that's just run by prostitutes. I'm okay with, like, that stuff. It's when we get yellow goblins around, and when we get cannibals.
See, the cannibal thing didn't bother me. It was just like a quirk. The yellow goblin didn't bother me. It was just a thing.
It's a thing, all right, yeah.
I just kind of overlooked it.
So what bothered you? Because I get the sense that you didn't love this movie.
No, actually, I like this movie a lot.
No, I knew you liked it, but like you're not singing its praises.
Because I think it's kind of a hard movie to do that with, because I think it is a polarizing movie. Like, because I could say I liked the art style a lot.
Yeah.
I think the acting by most people was fantastic.
Everyone but Clive Owen,
Exactly.
I'm tempted to say.
No, I totally agree. But how do you sell this movie to people who aren't willing to just go with the flow? Like, I'm thinking of people like my father, who can't even sit through fucking Die Hard without being like, vents aren't supposed to be that big. A person couldn't crawl through vents like that.
That's
You know
okay.
what I mean?
That's okay. I understand. Good point. We need Jessica Alba stripping earlier in the film. That gets your father on board, guarantee it.
Yeah, 100%. But also, too, I think, like, there are aspects in this movie that I wasn't necessarily turned off by, but I know some people probably wouldn't be a big fan of. Again, and it's that kind of comic booky, stylistic way to show things. Like, and again, I'm picturing Mickey Rourke grinding that guy's face into the ground out of the car, you know, with his legs flying up behind him.
Yeah,
like,
the
it just looks
most
silly.
comic book looking image from the film, probably.
Yeah.
Other than maybe Elijah Wood's eyes.
But I think the thing that would turn most people off from this movie is Clive Owen's story, The Big Fat Kill. Because all the other stories, they don't have that many characters in it. You can kind of follow, like, you can follow along. You can look away from the screen for 2 minutes and come back into it and know where you've left off and understand what's happening. Whereas with The Big Fat Kill, you go from woman's apartment to part of town run by hookers to dead cop into tar pit to IRA.
IRA was where
mob.
it lost me. Yeah.
And then samurai, Japanese samurai person who's throwing Hitler ninja stars. And somebody who has a swastika tattooed on his forehead who works for the mob for some reason.
And then a golden eye.
Yeah.
There's just a dumbness to the story boils down to a bunch of hookers firing machine guns at people. There's just such a stupidity there. And it's this, like... I haven't even seen the movie, but I'll refer to... It's related because it's Robert Rodriguez, but Planet Terror, with Rose McGowan with the gun on her leg or whatever, and it's just like, oh, hot girls with guns are cool, and it's like, yeah, if you're 9, there's this like juvenile like, oh, girls with guns are cool, like hookers in the like. Listen, we all love the femme fatale character. Mm-hmm. Do they all have to be hookers?
But they all have to have big tits and long hair, and it just happens that lots of hookers have big tits and long hair, and it is weird.
Listen, it's based on a bunch of graphic novels that are, more adult-oriented graphic novels than a lot of the stuff out there, but it's still like this, there's this juvenile attitude, and as much as I am serious when these directors know how to shoot women, they don't know how to write women necessarily, and it's the script, it's the stories that just lose me. They start promising and devolve into
wonky kind of
and I think the reason
things.
Part of the reason why The Hard Goodbye is my favorite is that silliness is interwoven throughout. Yes, there's still a big leap to get to the cannibals, but you have Mickey Rourke dragging someone from the car as he's driving over the speed limit. You have stuff like that. Like, that stuff to me is just integrated throughout that story better.
Yeah, I agree. And I also think, too, that you could even get rid of that one bookend, the last one there, and though it does kind of round out, but the only reason that exists is because the Clive Owen story, the Big Fat Kill, exists.
Yeah, they could have just killed Alexis
just
Bledel in that story. They didn't necessarily need to come back to Josh Hartnett.
Exactly, but I think this movie benefits from that opening with Josh Hartnett, because you see that Sin City title card come up right away, and you are introduced to this neo-noir world through that first little opening. Mm-hmm. You get those pops of color with her green eyes and the red dress, and you get that kind of abrupt end to this story with Josh Hartnett, surprisingly, killing this woman, and then you get directly into the Bruce Willis story. So if you had that Yellow Bastard Part 1, The Hard Goodbye, and That Yellow Bastard Part 2... I think this would be a much better movie. Also, you'd take out half an hour of running time. Because, this movie's 2 hours long. Mm-hmm. It's a little too long, and it's all because of this goddamn Clive Owen story, which just goes off the fucking rails and doesn't really connect to anything else in this movie.
Yeah, but how much? I mean, the other stories only loosely connect. We see Elijah Wood for a whole 2 seconds in that Yellow Bastard Part 2, you know. I guess there's Nancy. Nancy is in the background of the Hard Goodbye.
Yeah, but also those ones are more directly dealing with the Rourke family.
That's true. That's true.
Where you have the cardinal, the senator, the son, whereas the Big Fat Kill isn't dealing with any of them directly.
That's a fair point.
And again, I really do like this movie. I've seen it a fair few times, and I think I like it a bit more every time I watch it, but I can say without a doubt that I dislike Clive Owen and his story more every time I watch this movie.
Interesting.
Just because it feels so drawn out and confusing.
Well, it's funny too because I this is only the second time I had seen it. I remember thinking rather positively about it the first time I saw it, and when I came back to it for this podcast, I remembered Bruce Willis. I remembered Mickey Rourke. I remember Jessica Alba. I mean, who could forget? I did not remember Clive Owen. I guess I remembered Rosario Dawson, maybe, but I didn't remember a damn thing about that story, and I see why. It's not a strong one.
No, you know, the only unforgettable aspect in that story is the way that Benicio del Toro dies.
Okay.
Because I remembered that he was in that story, and that's always one of the parts of this movie that sticks out to me is the way he dies and just how brutal that is, getting in the end, the blunt end of a gun. Well, I guess all ends are blunt, but the end of a gun getting lodged in your forehead and not dying immediately. Disgusting. But Clive Owen is very forgettable. And this goes back to something you were saying. It's a very 2005 movie with a lot of 2005 names.
I'm certain this isn't, but is this the role that lost him James Bond?
Oh.
Casino Royale comes out next year. Clive Owen was the odds-on favorite to inherit the James Bond role from Pierce Brosnan.
Yeah, because you know what?
They cast Daniel Craig, and there was minor outrage. I remember there was a news story that my friend showed me. It said, "Die Another Day," DYE, because Daniel Craig's blonde. Like, Daniel Craig was not a super well-known. He was in Lara Croft. He's in Road to Perdition. That was like, he wasn't like
and The Golden Compass.
That was later, I think.
Oh, okay.
And then he was also in Layer Cake, which was, I believe, earlier, which is a really good movie. But I think we're both grateful that we got Craig instead of Owen. Not that Owen would have been bad, but I think...
No, and I'm also wondering if it's maybe the American accent that was making this a little more
I do wonder
difficult.
about that. Yeah, why did he... No one would have minded if he did the British accent. They could have just let him do that.
Yeah, and I think maybe it's because of him doing an American accent. Nothing came across quite as noir-y as Bruce Willis or Mickey Rourke saying their lines.
Also, when I've... Because he's in this movie, there's a scene as he's approaching the car in Old Town, he's got the dual-wielding pistols, and it reminded me a lot of the movie Shoot 'Em Up.
Oh,
but
yes.
I just want to point out, Clive Owen can work in this silly comic booky tone. He has. I mean, that movie came out later, I think. But, like, I've seen him be effective in movies kind of like this. Like, you know, just surface level similar to this. Mm-hmm. And so it's not that he's a bad actor. It's just something's not right.
Yeah, it just wasn't a good part for him.
Yeah.
I don't know, and I don't know if any part in this movie would have been a good part for him. I don't think he suits that strong, silent, yet monologue-y person that Bruce Willis does. And like Bruce Willis, and again,
well, in the monologues specifically, the narration specifically, him delivering that in a different accent than his native accent is...
Yeah, it must have been difficult for him.
Weird. And I'm not a professional actor by any means, but like, if you give me lines, I can deliver them in a British accent. If I'm just like, you know, acting, you know, I could do the to be or not to be speech. I still have most of that memorized from high school. I could do that in an accent. If you have me just narrating, obviously the lines are written, but it would just be different. It would just be weird. And if it's obviously certain dialogue sounds better in different accents than it, like, that accent needs to come from again, I don't even know what it is. It sounds great coming from Bruce Willis. It sounds bad coming from Michael Madsen. It sounds bad if it's spoken by someone who's consumed nothing but cigarettes and cocaine for the last 35 years.
Yeah.
It sounds good if it's Bruce Willis. It sounds good if it's Mickey Rourke. It's maybe it sounds good if you've been in a motorcycle accident that almost killed you. I don't know what it is.
I'm wondering.
People in this listen. Elijah Wood would have been bad with these lines too, but he doesn't say anything.
Yeah, he would have been. Yeah,
I can't imagine Elijah Wood giving noirish narration dialogue. I can't imagine him with that. Powers Booth, sure.
Yeah,
Powers Booth can do anything
because of that fucking name. I'm wondering if we went back and listened to Clive Owens, to his lines, I'm wondering if we went back and listened to them, would it sound flat? And again, if it's because of the accent, I can understand, but he almost sounded emotionless.
He's a professional actor. It's got to be more than that, because
but it almost sounded emotionless, right? Where Bruce Willis's lines, he had weight behind those lines. And even Mickey Rourke.
There's the hard-boiled stoicism, but there's still feeling there. There's an old man for... An old man dies, a little girl lives. Fair trade-off. Like there's weight to everything he's saying. He does that stoicism, but he still puts a layer of emotion there. I would say the same for Mickey Rourke. Yeah, Clive Owen, it's just the stoicism.
Yeah, there is nothing behind those lines. It's like when you meet. It's like when you're talking to a friend and.
Don't have any, but go on.
It's like when you're talking to a friend and. You tell them a joke that they don't find that funny, and they laugh, but you can see that they're not laughing in their eyes. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm just thinking the amount of jokes of yours that I've laughed at.
Oh, fuck. See me. Fuck you.
No, that's perfectly fair. And listen, am I going to be a little bit more critical on actors, having just a week ago seen Sir Kenneth Branagh in King Lear on stage? Yes. Kenneth Branagh's not coming through that door, ladies and gentlemen. We've got Clive Owen. What are we going to do? I don't know. Got a lot of attractive women here. They're acting. Jessica Alba, I've never thought of Jessica Alba as a great actress, but she's perfectly fine in this film.
Yeah.
She's good. Yeah. We were talking about how creepy that love story is, but you can look at it from the perspective of she's a traumatized person. She has no one in this world but him. You would hope she doesn't look at that in a romantic way, but she does, because she doesn't have a father figure to say, no, this is wrong.
Yeah. All in all, I think this is a really good movie. I'm not going to call it one of my favorites. I'm not going to call it a great movie, but it's a good movie that I enjoyed. And if it wasn't for Clive Owen and his story, I would probably like this a little more. But unfortunately, we can't change that, even though I wish we could.
There is an extended cut if you want to see more Clive Owen, I guess. I don't know.
No, thank you. I'm over it, dude.
I wonder if in the extended cut, Nick Stahl's balls get ripped off a third time.
That'd be pretty funny. I'd watch that. I think
that's the only thing that's added for the extended cut. It just happens again. They reconstruct him.
For a third time.
They get Lee Majors in there to reconstruct him. And, I don't know.